Honorable Minister Delil and the Deputy Minister, together with the delegation that she's leading. We are meeting today to specifically just reflect on the progress that we have made since the department made a presentation. Remember that following that, we tabled a report that was approved by the House following the presentation of both the APP and also the plan. So as a result thereof, we agreed that on a quarterly basis we'll be able to table the reports just to update us on terms of progress. So having said that, without any waste of time, allow me to take this opportunity to check whether there are any apologies that we have from the Secretary.
Thank you, Chairperson. So far, there's no apology that I've received.
Thank you. Then without any apology, let me then take this opportunity to give over to the Minister to present the opening remarks and lead the team. Over to you, Minister.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, and thank you once again for the opportunity. I am joined this morning by the DM and also Professor Kgotsenso Ramakgopa as the Head of Infrastructure, and Ms. Mametsi Masamula, who is the DGD for Infrastructure Investment and Oversight. And then also Mr. Albino Volskert-Prince, who is the Program Manager for Infrastructure, the Infrastructure Pipeline and Development Management. And then Dr. Herbert Join, who is the Program Manager for ISA Center for Excellence. And lastly, Ms. Nombolelo, who is the Chief Director, External Relations and Social Facilitation. We are happy to present the progress to you and the members this morning, Honorable Chair. And without any waste of time, through you, Chairperson, if I ask Professor Kgotsenso Ramakgopa, just to start the presentation for us. I thank you, Honorable Chair and members.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for that. And also congratulations to the Prof for your achievement. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to honorable members. Thank you, Minister Patricia de Lille and DM Kivit as our principals. As the Minister has indicated, Chair and members, we are presenting to you a progress report on the implementation of the infrastructure investment plan. So it's going to be covered in three broad categories. The first one is going to be a reflection on the contribution of infrastructure to the economic recovery effort, but also trying to illustrate the relationship of investment and development and the extent to which rural areas are excluded from the pipeline of investments in the country, and that undermines the prospects of development in those parts of the country, resulting in unmanaged movement into the urban centers that result in decay and also other social ills. So we're making the point that there's a need for the state to drive very aggressive and conscious effort to direct investments into the rural spaces. We have also, Chair, from the Center of Excellence in the office, attempted to excavate some evidence to help us to shape our policy responses and policy choices in relation to infrastructure. We have developed a number of indices, and what we'll share with you today is something called the Rural Access Index that the team has been working on, just to show that there's a considerable amount of people who are excluded from the democratic dividend from an infrastructure point of view. And those people are located in the main, like I said, in the rural areas. And we hope that this will help to inform government's investments in the rural areas. And then the third area that we're covering has to do with the progress report, the actual progress report, because we had come before the committee, the minister presented the infrastructure investment plan. So we are requested to share with the committee the degree to which we have been able to make progress in its implementation. I think the point to raise here, Chair, is that we are not the principal custodians of these projects. They still reside with the mandate owner. So for an example, the delivery of transport project resides with the Ministry of Transport. Water resides with the Water and Sanitation. So although we're responsible for reporting on those, the procurement exercise, the responsibility to ensure that there's a participation of local communities, the pace of delivery and quality of delivery still resides with the department. So I think it's an area that we think we should improve the coordination of the delivery of these projects. I'm sure, Chair, you'd have noted, I think a few months back, that SANRAL has cancelled the projects over 16 billion rands, and that sets back the infrastructure investment program as announced by Minister DeLille, that although the office was successful in raising money in the debt capital market, but the procurement still resides somewhere else. So it's something that requires attention going forward. And then the last area, Chair, is just to share with the committee the work we are doing on the second leg of the infrastructure and the National Infrastructure Plan 2050. We have done the first leg of the NIP, the National Infrastructure Plan 2050. We have been focusing on foundational network industries. And Minister DeLille managed to find safe passage of the NIP phase 1, which was adopted after considerable engagement with the multiple actors in the infrastructure space, went to NEDLEC, communities, labor, and also the industry players and SOEs contributed significantly to the design and final adoption of the NIP 2050 on the foundational network industry. So now we're working on the second leg of the NIP, which focuses on what we call distributed infrastructure. So it will be passenger rail, it will be human settlements, it will be the reticulation side of water, it will be local roads, and areas that the design of and delivery of social infrastructure. So we'll share with the committee the progress we are making today. So it's not about the substance, but the progress we've made to date. Of course, at the right time, led by the minister and as requested by the committee, we can come and share the more substantive presentation in relation to the progress in delivering the NIP. Chair, with your permission and as led by the minister and the DM, we now want to take you through the presentation. Like I said, is a team effort. Chair, with your permission, Dr. Hewitt Joint will lead us for the first part, and then Mr. Tsepo Chweni will lead us on the second part, and Ms. Mametsi Masemola will lead us on the remainder of the presentation. With your permission, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, and good morning, Chair, members, Minister, and DM. Yes, I think it's always good to start your presentation just by giving a feedback on how well the GDPF has performed in the past quarter. And when you look at this graph, it's clear that the construction industry is not performing well. This is as a result of the fact that we had a negative growth due to underwhelming results of the residential buildings and construction work. So all the infrastructure related stuff will fall under the construction sector. Mining and quarrying is also one of the sectors that underperformed, although some of the other sectors in the economy, as you can see from the green bars, have performed quite well during the first quarter of 2022. So when we move to the next slide, it is also important to always keep the aspirational targets of a national development plan, in mind as we approach the year 2030. We're all aware that the investment target for gross fixed capital formation should be 30% of a GDP. Now, together with PwC and other support, we've done forecasting to determine how, based on existing investment patterns, what the current target will be for us to meet the GDP gross fixed capital formation target. And the gap will be by the year 2030, 4.8 trillion rand if we don't change and increase investment. In terms of the spend by government, it's also clear that a national, provincial, local SOEs and PPPs will have to contribute around 600 billion in terms of the existing spend, but we also then need to increase that component to 1.6 trillion rand going forward. So it's quite a daunting task ahead. But, that's one of the reasons why Infrastructure South Africa, together with the Infrastructure and Investment Office in the Presidency, also developed the country investment strategy to ensure that we do attract additional infrastructure and other investment to the country. We can move to the next slide. And these two maps actually are a reflection of what Professor Ramagoppa alluded to in terms of a democratic dividend of a country, in terms of the urban and rural divide. And it's two different heat maps. The one on the left-hand side reflects the gross fixed capital formation in terms of building and construction works. Now, typically you get six different asset categories in gross fixed capital formation. This is just looking at the building and construction works that's applicable to infrastructure. And the dark green reflects the highest levels of investment, whereas your dark red reflects the lowest or underinvestment. So it's also clear the spatial disaggregation and spatial mapping of the investment in terms of building and construction work. So I think everybody is aware that Gauteng attracts the largest construction spending, and it sits at around 32%. Whereas the Northern Cape, if you look at it from that perspective, only attracts 2.5% of building and construction works in terms of their investment spending. On the right-hand side, we've now also disaggregated this into district levels, so one can actually get a much better picture. Now, this includes all levels of gross fixed capital formation, so it's all six asset categories. And again, the metropolitan areas, like the city of Tshwane, Joburg, eThekwini, as well as Cape Town, one can see that they attract the highest levels of investment, whereas your rural areas do definitely suffer from underinvestment and low investment as a percentage share of the investment in the country. So we are tracking this to just see how the investment of our rural programs will change gross fixed capital formation in the rural areas as we proceed with the implementation over time. And then when we move to the next slide, this is one of the indices that we developed as Professor Ramagoppa has alluded to. This talks to the road infrastructure index. We've actually done more than just the rural, we've done it for all areas. Now this work was attempted by the World Bank in 2007, where they did a country analysis. So they just rated each country compared to another country. But the problem with that work, it didn't give any spatial perspective. So what we did at the Center of Excellence was now to really revisit the methodology, as well as applying our mapping skill sets and then determining the percentage of rural population within a 2-kilometer or a paved road or all-weather road as a percentage. So it again, the red areas reflect poor accessibility and the dark green, good accessibility. So on the right-hand side, if you look at the bar chart, it's again quite evident that Gauteng, more than 80% of the population are within 2 kilometers, whereas your rural provinces such as Eastern Cape and Limpopo sits at around 30% of the population. We've also disaggregated this into district level. And what was also quite interesting, of the 10 worst districts in terms of accessibility, in terms of their population, 9 of them had a positive population growth since the 2011 census. So the narrative that the rural areas are losing population numbers or reducing in population is not true. Some of the areas, just one of those 10 areas had the negative population growth. So it's highly important that we start using these heat maps to start prioritizing once we start to implement the rural roads and rural bridges programs and other rural investments. So we are working on similar indices for other sectors, and this will definitely guide the country in making investment decisions so that we can also address the urban and rural divide. Thank you. Next slide. This slide is just an indication of the actual infrastructure spending. On the left-hand side, the blue lines reflect, the blue bars reflect the actual allocated budgets, whereas the orange and gray, the actual spending. So it's quite clear that there's some underspending happening in terms of approved budget. So it's not always the case that the money is not available. Sometimes the money is allocated to the different departments, but they underspend the allocated budgets. And you can also see that the percentage spent, it was above 7% of the GDP. It's currently around 3.3%, and the NDP target for public infrastructure investment spending sits at 10%. So again, we are far below the target. And then on the right-hand side, it's just again reflecting the allocation or composition of the MTEF spending and allocation of budgets, and it's clear that local government and provincial government, as well as your state-owned companies, sits with a bulk of the public infrastructure purse. And then going forward, in terms of the forecasted MTF estimates, it's clear that this will definitely increase as we look towards the next 3 years in the MTF. We can move to the next slide. What we also did is to look at the 3 main sectors, 4 sectors of the NIP in terms of transport, the electricity, water, and communication. And when you look at the performance, and these numbers were aggregated so that we work on real values. So it was in 2015 values, so you can actually compare year with year, and it's clear that the electricity, gas, and water sector did not really grow since 2000. So it's actually a sector that needs some injection to grow, and it's a very important sector for the country, and hopefully all these water and energy projects will definitely stimulate some growth. The transport and communication sectors had quite good growth up to COVID, and you can see the impact of COVID with a drop. This was a direct impact on constraint of moving of goods that had a serious impact on that industry. And on the right-hand side, again, just revisiting the gross fixed capital formation. In the recent past, we were over 20%, but we are currently sitting at 14.3%, although the trend line is starting to move upwards again. So again, a massive target. And with all these infrastructure investments, this will definitely augment and assist the growth in gross fixed capital formation. And in conclusion, I think some key economic takeaways. We must be open about it. The construction industry remains constrained. In terms of gross fixed capital formation growth, there are small signs of growth, especially in terms of the 2022, where it was growing positively at a 3.6%. So I think in terms of investment, you saw on that graph that there's a substantial investment required to meet the aspirational NDP targets of a country. But we are striving and we are developing different approaches, and the country investment strategy will also assist us in this regard. And then just lastly, the development of the infrastructure indices by Infrastructure South Africa will assist in prioritizing projects to address the urban and rural divide. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Mr. Tsepu Tsweni. He's taking over from Alvina Wilson-Prince. He's unfortunately off sick. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joint, and good morning to the Minister, the Deputy Minister, Chairperson, members, and also to my colleagues. I will take the members through the next few slides that give high-level update on the project pipeline. Can we go to the next slide, please? So just the background in terms of the program around infrastructure pipeline development and management. It has 3 focus areas. If we can move again to the slide. So the first focus area is on the coordination and management of the strategic integrated projects, which are gazetted under the Infrastructure Development Act. And currently we have 62 of those projects which were gazetted in July 2021. And then the second focus area focus on the development of a comprehensive infrastructure investment project pipeline. That's where we as the team of ISA were working with the technical working groups, the project sponsors, looking and reviewing on business case to make sure that we have a credible investable project pipeline that we can use to mobilize funding and source also financing for projects in the medium and long term. And the third focus area is around the general tracking and monitoring of all the infrastructure projects which are in our pipeline. And to that end, we're also looking at introducing systems and platforms that allow us to also provide dashboards on those projects in terms of updates. We can go to the next slide. So this is a high-level representation of the projects that are within our pipeline that are sitting with the technical working groups. As indicated, we're working with these technical working groups to review the business case of the projects to ensure that their finances are credible, the management structures in terms of implementing the project, there is enough capacity to implement without unnecessary delays. And we also identify some of the project risk and challenges and also assist where there are blockages. So at high level, we have 328, and in the slide, we have 2 representations. One is the representation of projects per sector, and we can see from the left side of the table that the sector that has the highest project is the energy sector, followed by human settlement, and then transport and social infrastructure. On the right is the geographical spread of those projects in terms of where they are located provincially. And also we can see from the slide that KZN has the highest project in the technical working group, followed by Gauteng, the Western Cape, and then at the bottom we have Limpopo and also the Eastern Cape. But as indicated, there's continuous work from ESA to unlock the project pipeline with the different provinces. So possibly in the next reporting, there may have been an increase or a shift in terms of the numbers that we have. If we can go to the next slide. So the next few slides will give detailed now statuses in terms of where the projects are. As part of the IDA, there is a requirement, especially around the governance of strategic integrated project or SIPs, that there be a steering committee that will work with the project implementers to accelerate the project in terms of the set timelines as per the Act. And one of the mandate of the steering committee is to ensure that the projects that are gazetted as a strategic integrated project, they have what we call a project plan. And the project plan will outline at high level the timelines for different authorizations, the planned start, the planned end date, including also the cost and the social and economic benefits of the project. So this slide represents at high level in terms of the key sectors that ESA has oversight on in terms of the project, which has presented us with the business plans, and those business plans have been approved by the steering committee, and the ones which are still outstanding, and the ones which they've been followed up, but no project plans have come, and therefore there have been resolutions from the steering committee to cancel that project. So if we look in terms of the water and sanitation, of all the projects that we have there, the majority of them we have received the project plans and they've been approved, with the exception of 3 projects, which is Valhamahara, Umsumvuvu, and Grot Letaba. There is currently still consultations and follow-ups by the technical team from ESA to get those project plans. And then with one project where the project plan has been cancelled, and the project is Orange Reed Canal. And then on the energy sector, we have all the project plans. On the transport, we also have all the project plans. The digital sector, we have the project plan. For agri, we only have one project plan that has been cancelled. And on human settlement, we have also received the majority of the project plan, with one project being still outstanding or the project plan being cancelled. If we can go to the next slide. So the next following slides, they will give detailed statuses in terms of the project. We have a project SIP16, which is the Meerkat and SKA. This project is sponsored by the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory. So this was a bid that was won by South Africa to host the biggest dish setup in the world. And currently there are different countries which are co-sponsoring the development of this project. And from the South African side, the key thing to note there is the infrastructure, the shortfall that we have of 3.2 billion. But to this end, with regard to the shortfall, ESA has supported the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory to submit funding request to the BFI. And there's been currently consideration for the submission to go for detailed evaluation. So that will put us in a position where we can also mitigate the funding shortfall that we as a country has to bring, because also other partners are bringing funding to this project. The project is based in the Northern Cape, and as indicated in the slide, once completed, it will be the largest satellite setup in the world. If we can go to the next slide. So this slide focuses on SIP19, which is the water sector projects. I won't go through every project, but I'll just give a few highlights in terms of some of the key projects, starting with Lesotho Highlands Water Project. There, the project is focusing on water security in Gauteng region and surrounding areas through the transfer of water from Lesotho into the country. The key thing there is that there is already advanced work which is being done in terms of roads and also things like energy, making sure that there will be sufficient transmission to the area to run turbines and pipes and the transfer schemes. But in terms of the main contract, we are still awaiting to finalize the loan agreement. So the main thing that is outstanding with regard to that project is the finalization of the loan agreements for us to move to the next stage, which will allow us then to award the main contract to start with the main project for the transfer of water from Lesotho into South Africa. Then the second project, we have Mokolo Crocodile River Water Augmentation. This project is key in terms of it being able to deliver water for domestic usage and providing access to households, but also to unlock additional mineral resources in the Waterberg area. We know there in terms of the minerals that are being mined in that area, coal, chrome, platinum, and others. So the project is key there, and there's a lot of traction because of the possible offtake agreements that will come from the private sector. So with this one, there were appeals from on the environmental impact assessment, but all the appeals now have been dismissed by the department, and the implementing agent there, which is the Trans-Caledon Tunnels Authority, TCTA, is approaching the market for funding to raise long-term debt. And maybe lastly, on this slide, I will speak also around Umkomazi Water Project, where there's also been applications for amendments of the EIA that have been submitted to the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Environment for them to consider. So once that is done, that will also increase the pace at which water supply agreements are being finalized. You know, and I'm sure maybe because the presentation will be shared with the members, they will see also the statuses on other water projects. We can proceed to the next slide. So this slide is just a high-level recap on the risk mitigation for independent power producers that was announced by the president. And it's also part of the SIP 20. So I will move to the next slide just to give members an understanding of where the projects are, apart from their contracted capacity in terms of megawatts. If we can go to the next slide. So this slide again shows, as indicated, where some of the companies which have been contracted as part of their risk mitigation are with regard to the different authorizations. You know, so from our side as the technical tax team for ESA, we work with these project sponsors to unblock or unlock a number of obstacles which vary from servitudes, water user license, EIAs, and in some cases, agreements with other institutions such as the TNPA, Transnet Ports Authority, in cases where they will need to set up around shore. And yeah, so those are some of the focus areas that we focus on in terms of supporting them. We can see from the slide that there's been numerous unblockings that has happened, although we still have few areas where we have high impact on critical path. And those are some of the challenges that day in, day out, through the Energy Technical Working Group and through the leadership of Professor Hussein Soramkhopa, we are continuously engaging with the relevant authorities to make sure that we try to unblock this, as indicated in the slide. So the immediate is for us to ensure that this energy mitigation gets to be accelerated for the delivery of the intended close to 2,000 megawatts that has been identified under this program. We can move to the next slide. So this slide provides a high-level status update in terms of the challenges and the successes in terms of unblocking those challenges for bid window 5, which is also part of our renewable energy program. So we can see again in the slide, there's been considerable unblocking that has been done through the support of ESA, and that cut across different authorizations which have been required: DMRE, WULAS, Transnet, Wayleaves, Sanral, and borrow PIDs from DMRE again. So here we are just giving an indication of the daily work that the team is doing in making sure that it lessens the regulatory burden for us to get to a more sustainable electricity generation capacity that is required to stimulate economic growth and also connect areas which don't have access to electricity. We can move to the next slide. So this slide focuses on transport, and it will just depict on high level in terms of the project that has been completed since the report was provided to the members. We have completed N1 Windback interchange in the Free State, the N1 Limpopo East Ring Road phase, which allow for smooth traffic to pass and not to allow for trucks not to go through town. If they are going to the N1 Bait Bridge, they can off-ramp and avoid causing congestion in the inner city. And then we have also N1 Ventersburg to Kronstadt in the Free State. And some of the project which we have envisaged requirement to start by October 2022 from Sanral are indicated also in the slide. We have the N3 Paradise, we have the N2 Edwin, N2 EB Colette interchange. And these are some of the projects that possibly in the future reporting we will provide the statuses in terms of where they are individually around project status, since we expect that by that time the procurement processes would have already started. And in construction within this project, we have the small harbour development, which is in the Western Cape. We have the Musina Ring Road. This was also visited by a few executive authorities in terms of ministers, and work is close to completion in that area. We're expecting that there will be a handover soon from Sanral. And then we have also the N3 Cato Ridge. We have lastly the N3 Aspetan interchange to Moray Road, also in KZN, and projects that are in preparation where we are still assessing the business case and looking for best options. Some of them include the small harbors in KZN, Northern Cape and Eastern Cape, also the Bohobai port and rail infrastructure in the Northern Cape, and lastly, the N3 new alignment via DBS Pass, Free State. We can go to the next slide. So in terms of our infrastructure for the digital sector, we have the Space Infrastructure Hub. The big thing to note here is that ESA have worked with the implementing agent to put in a business case and a submission to the National Treasury Budget Facility for Infrastructure. And the project is currently under consideration for the BFI. And based on that, it will possibly be allocated funding, which will allow it to move to the next phase of the project in terms of implementation. We can move to the next slide. So this slide just indicates high level the status across different social housing programs that ESA has oversight on. They are currently at different stages, ranging from procurement, planning, construction, and some they've been on hold because they've not been information that has been provided to ESA, as Prof indicated in his remarks. that we are reporting, but the implementation is still sitting with the relevant department. And in some cases, we do experience challenges in terms of them giving us reports that allow for sufficient monitoring and oversight. So on the high-level status, we have a project that has been completed in Gauteng, that is Joe's Place, Foshville, and Sondela. And we have a project that are also in procurement, that's Hull Street in Northern Cape and Germiston in Gauteng. And lastly, we have ones which are in planning. Again, Gauteng there is represented Fi Kwandogutle, and also we have Willow Creek in Mpumalanga. We can move to the next slide. So this slide indicates just high-level status of some of the private sector and integrated residential development programs. We have 8 of these programs, and they are at different stages of the project life. The nice thing about this, or the one thing to mention about this project, is these are huge projects which provide massive housing opportunities to South Africans, but also they provide economic opportunities because of their integrated nature. They allow for shopping malls to be set up, also additional provision of services such as schools, health, and other social infrastructure, including social amenities where kids can develop. So we have the first project, which is in construction, which is Conubia. The project is implemented through various phases, and currently under phase 1, we have 2,662 units which have been completed, and the other phases are currently being rolled out. Then we also have Vista Park in Free State, which is also in construction. And there, the immediate focus has been on the provision of bulk services. And as we talk, we are currently around 85% complete with regard to bulk services. Once the bulk services are done, then we'll move into the foundation and top structures, setting up the housings. Then we also have Luforeng. Luforeng, to date, we have 3,412 units which have been completed. Then we have projects in Malubongwe, and to Nodal and Matlosana that are also at different implementation phases. We can proceed to the next slide. So the next few slides are going to give a high level in terms of what we term special programs. These were also part of the Gazette of 2020. So the first special program that we're giving an update on is called Welisizwe, which is focusing on the provision of rural bridges. These are the areas which are experiencing challenges in terms of mobility when it floods or accessing services. So we have 6 provinces that are earmarked to benefit from these bridges in this current financial year. And the provinces, although they are 6, and we are targeting to deliver the bridges which are indicated on the slide. The thing to note is that the conditional assessment were done per province. So it was not just a random selection of saying we'll do 18 bridges in the Eastern Cape, we'll do 18 in KZN or 18 in Mpumalanga. There were assessments which were done, and those assessments are the ones which build a case for the implementing teams to say, here we do need a bridge because maybe it provides access to school, it provides access to healthcare, or it provides access to connect communities and also economic opportunities. So for this program, we have South African National Defence Force as the implementer, and also the department providing a support department, meaning the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, providing support to the technical teams of the ones which are from the Defence Force. So the aim currently is to roll out, as indicated, 96 bridges within the current financial year. We can move to the next slide. So this slide speaks to Rural Roads Program. As from the SONA, it was indicated by the President that the target over the next MTOF period is to rehabilitate or upgrade 685 kilometers of rural roads that basically split into 228 kilometers per year. ESA here is working with different provinces to try and strengthen their business cases. We have Limpopo Road Agency as the one entity that has been leading in terms of projects which are currently ready for funding and implementation. Most of their projects, they have designs, they have EIAs, they just don't have the money to implement. And we've also worked with the Northwest Province to package and submit their project to the budget facility for infrastructure. So increasing our support to the provinces just to assist them in terms of packaging all these roads programs so that we can start with the process of helping them to source funding for moving into project construction. So we can go to the next slide. So this slide speaks to PV and water savings on government building programs. This is a program that is led by the National Department of Public Works because of its national portfolios around building. It has been deemed that it is feasible for the department to implement efficiency measures in the use of water, the use of also electricity. So here we're also looking to set up or be ready for an RFP that we can issue before the end of August. That is the big milestone that we're targeting in the current term to ensure that there is an RFP that is out to attract the private sector to participate. So we can go to the next slide. So here we are having a slide that represents also one of the programs, which is the Salvagop Precinct. The key milestone here to note is that the contractor for the bulk electrical work has been appointed in June 2022. And some of the key milestone there is looking to install all bulk infrastructure between now and 2023. And move ahead with the construction of head office buildings under the 4 triple Ps between 2024 and 2026. So those are some of the high-level key milestones. But in the main, we have managed to secure a contractor for the bulk electrical works. We can move to the next slide. So this is the last slide that will just indicate, as part of the infrastructure project pipeline, we do work with project sponsors and also with the infrastructure fund to generate or source blended funding for some of these projects. And represented in the slide is the 8 projects which are advanced and that has been considered by the infrastructure fund. The project values are indicated there in terms of the project and what it cost. And we have seen in terms of also in the same slide, the amount that has been requested from the BFI for the SAFE project and also the infrastructure fund. So from the 8 projects, although they have all made submissions to the BFI, only 2 have to some extent secured an infrastructure fund facility. That is the Umkomazi Water Augmentation Program with a figure there of 6 billion and the Tuha Manganese Export Terminal Project with a figure of half a billion. So I think this is the last slide under the project infrastructure project pipeline. If we can just go to the next one to confirm. Yes. I will then hand over members to DDG Mametsima Samola for the National Infrastructure Plan.
Thank you very much, Tsepo. Good day, good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable members, Minister Dilil, Deputy Minister Nokolo Kivit, the Head of Infrastructure South Africa, Professor Ramogopa, my colleagues at DPWI and Infrastructure South Africa. I'm going to cover the slides that talk to the National Infrastructure Plan, Phase 2. So the Infrastructure Development Act of 2014 mandates the minister responsible for infrastructure development, and in this case is Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, to develop a comprehensive national development plan for the country. We have decided to develop this work in two phases, as Professor Ramogopa mentioned earlier on. The first phase focusing on really bulk infrastructure in energy, freight transport, water, and digital communications. We have now developed the draft National Infrastructure Plan Phase 2 that focuses on distributed infrastructure. So infrastructure that's a little bit more geared towards ensuring that an individual, a household, a business has access to reliable, affordable infrastructure. Focusing in really on this need, we're focusing more on universal access and ensuring that the infrastructure that is being built is secure, is safe, is financially and environmentally sustainable. So similar to NIP Phase 1, we're also, in addition to the different sectors that they're going to be focusing on, human settlements, and on social infrastructure, we're focusing more on education and health infrastructure, passenger transport, and what we term municipal trading services. They're looking at water and sanitation, as well as solid waste. We do have cross-cutting thematic areas that we cover. And in this case, we're also looking at ensuring that we are building private sector confidence in government's ability to deliver on projects, and ensuring that policy and regulatory obstacles that investments by both the private and public sector in infrastructure are addressed, and also building a capable state for long-term delivery of infrastructure. That's one of the things that will be coming through the NIP, the National Infrastructure Plan Phase 2, similar to what we have dealt with in NIP 1. As mentioned as well, the NIP 2, Phase 2, is not meant to be a comprehensive database of infrastructure projects, and neither is it intended to be sort of a consolidation of the different sector master plans. So different government departments will have their individual sector policies. So if it's the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, they'll have the National ICT Integrated Policy White Paper. They'll have the National Broadband Policy, etc. And the National Department of Transport will have a similar policy on rail and ports and road. So this plan is not meant to be a consolidation of that, and neither is it meant to be a spatial mapping of infrastructure projects, but it is intended to offer enough direction to strengthen the prioritization of the infrastructure plan, as well as looking at building solid or strong institutional mechanisms to drive the delivery of infrastructure, especially of high quality, high impact infrastructure projects. So that's what we're going to be looking at in relation to the National Infrastructure Plan. So if we go to the next slide, we highlight there the timelines. In terms of the next slide, we'll see the timelines that we have set in the delivery of the development and the delivery of the National Infrastructure Plan 2050. And this aligns with the annual performance plan that has been signed off of the department for the current financial year. We started off with establishment of the expert reference group made out of both private and private sector individuals that are infrastructure specialists in various areas. We established that as part of the co-creation and the co-development of this document. We have succeeded in doing so, and as part, in addition to that expert reference group that was established, we've also engaged and consulted at meetings, bilateral engagements with various government departments such as health, such as the, basic education, human settlements, higher education and training, as well as the National Treasury. We've also engaged with private sector organizations, as well as public entities, think tanks, local government municipalities such as City of Johannesburg, etc., as part of building and developing this particular national infrastructure plan. So as where we are at the moment is that we will be presenting this draft plan to the economic cluster of DGs actually tomorrow, and we will process it should it be approved at that level so that we can table it in cabinet. They will be seeking approval from cabinet to gazette the document for public consultation. Similar to NIP1, we'll go through very extensive public consultation processes and ensure that where relevant inputs and whether it's from written submissions that we'll be receiving or engagements, bilateral engagements and meetings, physical and virtual meetings that are going to be conducted. Those inputs get to be incorporated, and we're looking to revising the document over the periods of November and December as well as January to enable us that in February and March, we resubmit the document through the government processes, ultimately the cabinet to approve this as a infrastructure plan phase 2 approved in March of 2023. So that's where we are in relation to the national infrastructure plan.
My apology, I was just saying that there was a time where we lost you because of your network challenges. If you can just repeat the last thrust of the issues that you were presenting so that we can be with you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'm in the office actually. I thought that it would be best to be here for this. So my apologies for that, Chair. Just on this slide, Chair, we're indicating the extent to which we engaged with the various stakeholders, from national government departments to provincial and local government departments such as the CSRR, the DBSA, your NHPRC, as well as state-owned entities such as ESCOM and so on. Included in there would have been also various industry bodies such as Santaco, as well as local, multilateral development banks, as part of co-creating and co-developing this draft NIP 2050. So where we are now is that we are ready to present it to the economic cluster of DGs tomorrow. When it is approved, and if it is approved, we will be submitting it through the Cabinet Committee and Cabinet to seek approval from Cabinet to gazette it for public consultation. Similar to NIP2, to National Infrastructure Plan Phase 1, will also go out for a public consultation where we'll invite written comments. We'll also be engaging in virtual and physical meetings as part of a listing inputs and strategic guidance from stakeholders insofar as this NEP is concerned. We'll then use the months of November, December, and January to consolidate those inputs, redraft the document, and shape it in accordance to those inputs that have been received. And we will be seeking to submit it to Cabinet or through government processes and ultimately Cabinet in March 2023. They will be seeking approval for the document as final, and then the minister will gazette it as such. That's what we're saying on this particular slide. And then if we move on to the last two slides that I'll deal with. Here we thought that similar to last year when we were at this session, that we recap on the mandate of ESA as a single point of entry for all infrastructure processes, and that we are established to develop that credible infrastructure pipeline of high impact infrastructure projects, and that these infrastructure projects must be bankable, they must be able to be funded from the fiscus, they must be able to leverage private sector financing as well, and that ESA will be focusing on, of course, closing the infrastructure investment gap and ensuring that we are meeting the infrastructure investment targets as set in the National Development Plan of 2030. We are organized internally in ESA to be able to respond to this mandate. It's a very small team with a very big mandate and big ambitions. We are organized in delivering this mandate. We're organized in terms of the different programs being there, as indicated, the infrastructure investment planning and oversight, infrastructure project pipeline development, the infrastructure funding and financing program, state asset optimization, as well as the ESA Center of Excellence. So this is how we are organized internally in terms of the various programs. And if we go to the next slide, we then thought that we also highlight some of the areas, some of the targets that we'll be working on in the current financial year in particular, as part of ensuring that these national infrastructure must-wins, we do achieve them. So from an infrastructure investment planning and oversight perspective, we've now reflected on the work we're doing on the National Infrastructure Plan, phase 2, and we're also working on amendments to the Infrastructure Development Act to provide for the establishment of ESA as a public entity. We also, from an infrastructure pipeline perspective, a lot of the work that Mr. Tsepo Chweni has presented is essentially what this program is all about, ensuring that we're accelerating, fast-tracking the implementation of the strategic integrated projects. We are developing a pipeline that gets to be replenished every year. We are ensuring that there is unblocking of infrastructure projects, especially those that are private sector led, from the red tape, the various multiple authorizations and licensing and approvals that are required. We work very hard in ensuring that those get to be unblocked. And then from an infrastructure funding and financing perspective, we focus on the pipeline of infrastructure fund and the support there. We provide oversight over the infrastructure fund in jointly with the National Treasury, that we're going to be mobilizing project preparation resources and funding to ensure that these projects are properly prepared and packaged, and that they can be funded and financed as well. And then on the state asset optimization, we focus on the minister has given us the directive to focus on these 3 properties and buildings in the current financial year to see models that can extract value out of these state assets from an infrastructure investment perspective. And then from this ISA Center of Excellence, you've seen also in the first part of the current part of today's presentation, focusing on the modeling exercises that we do in relation to infrastructure investments in the country. We are also mandated to provide quarterly reports in terms of measuring the state of infrastructure performance as it relates to the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. There are going to be various publications that we're going to be issuing during the current financial year as part of this work of positioning ISA as a thought leader on issues around infrastructure investment and infrastructure development. So that concludes our slide presentation, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for leading your team. You are muted, Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, the team, for the presentation. I just want maybe to add that the acronym BFI is the Budget Facility for Infrastructure in National Treasury. I think we've used the acronym, but that's all, Chairperson. We are ready to take advice and comments and input from the honourable members. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, for leading your team to give us an update in terms of work in progress since we last met. I will now open the floor for engagement by honourable members. I've noted the honourable team. Just check this honourable team is Honourable Boshoff, is Honourable Khai, is Honourable Mateula. Let's proceed in that fashion. Honourable team, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I just want to apologise in advance. I'm on the road. I'm actually going to look at an infrastructure problem in Durban right now. We have a pump station that is overflowing and has killed all the life in the river going into the Indian Ocean. So I'm going to go look at that. Chairperson, the question I just wanted to ask, first of all, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. It's very detailed. Clearly a lot of thought's gone into it. And I applaud the work that ISA are trying to do. But the query that I have really is as follows. ISA, from my assessment, and please, I'll ask the Minister and the presenters to educate me if I'm incorrect, don't actually build anything. They don't have the budget to build anything. Effectively, they just facilitate the building of infrastructure and facilitate funding for that infrastructure. And it also appears, Chairperson, from my overview, that they assist officials in departments who frankly should have the ability to plan out infrastructure projects and to get the necessary funding for it. But I suppose that's the result of 20 years of cadre deployment. You have people in our departments who just don't know how to do that sort of thing. Anyway, that's besides the point. Chair, you'll remember that last week we had an engagement with DPME, Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. And it seems to me that the job of DPME and the job of ISA is very similar in that it's effectively a supervisory umbrella body. And so I just want to ask that question. Should ISA not actually be sitting under DPME, as their job is more supervisory and facilitating and providing interventions when needed? And then secondly, am I correct in saying that when we interacted with Deputy Minister Mahlobo, in Johannesburg on the 1st of July, when we did the ad hoc floods committee up there, he was saying that the water and sanitation infrastructure of Durban needs to be revamped completely, but that the job would cost around about 7.8 billion rand, and that the department certainly doesn't have that kind of money, and they would turn to Infrastructure South Africa in order to try and arrange it. So the first question out of that is, do departments approach Infrastructure South Africa from time to time and say, look, there's something we need to do that we need your assistance with? And then does Infrastructure South Africa assist with that funding, or assist trying to find the funding for projects like that? And then has the Department of Water and Sanitation approached Infrastructure Winnie project or Durban project, which is now effectively being tipped over the edge by the floods? And then finally, what role does Infrastructure South Africa play in making sure that whatever funding is attracted to projects, that it is properly spent in terms of the PFMA and that corruption is kept to a minimum? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Tim, for those questions. Let's give over to Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to everybody, and extend the warm welcome to the Minister and the Deputy Minister as well. Chair, I would just like to ask one question, and I'm going to direct it to Dr. Joint. He spoke about the rural areas that are suffering, and myself coming from a rural area in Mpumalanga, we see that on a daily basis. And he then took it further by saying that there will be implementation over time with regard to projects. But the longer it takes to implement these projects, the further the degradation goes. So I need to ask him, what is the time frame and what are they talking about, or what he is talking about with regard to implementation? I need to know what they're going to implement. And then I'd also like to know what the meaning is of the rural and urban divide. Is it related to finances, or is it related to projects that they're going to implement in the rural areas? Because we really need the department to come to the party with regard to the rural areas and the implementation thereof. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Boshoff. Honorable Khai.
Thanks very much, Chair. Sorry, I have a connectivity problem. I've just moved to one of the flats at Acacia Park, so I'm experiencing connectivity problem in the flat there. Let me first greet the Minister, Deputy Minister, and a team from ISA, as well from the department, and honorable members present. Chair, thanks for the presentation, Minister and the team. I just want Chair to, with regard to the progress on the project plans, I wanted perhaps that Professor Ramkhobo would take us through, in detail with regard to all the SIPs, 19 to 24. I was interested on the Mzimvubu water project. It talks about 36% so far in terms of progress. I don't know if there are any time frames with regard to as to when is this going to be completed, given that we've been talking about Mzimvubu water project. I'm told that since 1967. That's what the then Minister Nomvula Mokonyane said. It started in 1967, was still talking about it now, and we're talking about 36% progress. But also on small harbor, I was interested on those that are still in preparation, and also there's the issue of the business case. It gives an impression, therefore, that some of them might not be viable. Therefore, I'm more interested on the one in Eastern Cape at Port St. John's, for example, because there's expedition there. We've been there during the Ted Mandela 67 minutes day, or his birthday. And there's a high expectation with regard to that small harbor. But I'm worried that we're still looking at the business case. In terms of, I'm not saying there should be no assessment, but I hope that the business, there will be a business case for that particular harbor. And also with regard to the rural bridges, with the 1906 rural bridges, I just want to check if my understanding that these are bridges that are in the financial budget of 2022-2023. I just want to check, given that now in April there have been damages to bridges in KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, not in Northern Cape, sorry, Northwest, because we've been to Northwest, so there were no bridges that it's just a Dale Park that has been that has experienced flood. So I just want to check if are there any additional, is there any additional funding for those bridges other than the 96, or does the 96 include those bridges that were damaged by the recent floods? Chair, with regard to the National Infrastructure Plan 2050, I'm a bit worried about the time frames that were flighted there. There's a talk of the issue of public comments. We received the Gazette in last year, which is dated July, and that wanted the public to comment by the 17th of September 2021. But when you look at the presentation now, you're still going to have public. There's a note that there should be also public comments that are expected. But when you look at the Gazette itself, there are targets or time frames of some of the things that should have been done by certain periods, and some of those periods have passed. So I'm confused now when there is still going to be public comments that are expected in terms of the Gazette that was issued with regard to NIP 2050. For example, if you look at the issue of energy, there's supposed to be institutional arrangement, particularly with regard to the what is called independent transmission system and market operator, ITSMO. Now, if there are still going to be comments by the public with regard to that, it means therefore there's this institutional arrangement with regard to the separating generation, transmission, and distribution has not yet been done. With regard to, for example, Transnet Freight TFR, in the plan, there's a talk of separating rail infrastructure from operation, and also the creation of an independent port authority, and also the single transport economic regulator. So I don't know now how far are we with regard to those, if you're still going to table the plan for comment. And also with regard to TFR, there was going to be the introduction of third-party operators. I don't know how far are we with regard to that. And with regard to water, in the plan, it talks about the creation of a national water resource infrastructure agency. So if we can just be updated with regard to those, but just back on the rural bridges, I think it says the report says about 24 bridges, rural bridges will be built per quarter. We've passed quarter one now already. If the report doesn't indicate in terms of the progress in quarter one, whether we've managed to achieve and then the building of 24 rural bridges. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Matebula.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was hoping that the team will say in something regarding the Guyani water project, the progress. Because that project, Chair, it's been long, it's been there. And the people, they've not yet received water. So I hoped that the department will say something regarding the water project in Guyana, the progress report. And then I would also like to ask the DGG for infrastructure, what kind of strategy are they using to do oversight in projects, especially in the Pompo province, Chair, because we are experiencing a lot of projects being abandoned by contractors and they take long to finish. I will give you a practical example, like the water project, which I was talking about, and then the Polokwane Eastern Ring Road, which at some point it was abandoned by the contractor, and then it caused a lot of accident in the road, as well as the Guyani to Palabula Road, Chair, which the department went there and oversee what was happening there, because at some point the road there, the contractor there, it was using a cement to build that road. So I just want to check with the department, what strategy are they using to do oversight on all those projects? And then I will also pose a question to the minister if he's still here. We have infrastructures, minister, in rural communities which are not in use, which belongs to municipalities. For example, in Guyana, we've got this infrastructure which was meant to benefit the community. It was built, it got machine inside there, but it's not in use. And someone is benefiting out of that structure, renting it out to small businesses. I just wanted to check with the minister for what form of intervention they can use to intervene in such a matter where we've got the infrastructure which belongs to municipality and people hijack it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matebula. Honorable Apleni.
Thanks very much, Chair. Chair, I have a few questions that I would like to.
Are you still here, Honorable Apleni? Looks like we have lost you. I think we have lost Honorable Apleni. I think in that we'll allow him to come back once he's connectivity is sorted out. Maybe from my side, Honorable Minister and the team, let me start by appreciating the presentation that's given. I think the first one relates to the presentation made by Mr. Hubert, the first presenter, where he dealt with basically the overarching philosophical approach in terms of the target, the context of investment and performance, but more than that, the mapping out the situation in terms of the growth rates, the industrial growth rates, particularly pay more attention to the GDP and what has to be done to close the gap that reflects that indeed construction and mining inquiries compared to other sectors are lagging behind. I want to get a sense in terms of to what extent this approach is factored down to planning, both at the level of interaction with the provincial government and also local government, particularly at the level of at the district development model. How do we ensure that this overarching approach, which put more emphasis in terms of our commitment with regard to investment as far as infrastructure is concerned, and the fact that though our target is 30% and being midway through the implementation of the National Development Plan, what measures are they putting in place to ensure that they help us to achieve this target? I'm putting more emphasis with regard to local government, particularly given the proximity that they have and also the advantage that they have with regard to the local economic players, whether it is at the level of the mining, through their social and labor plan. How do we ensure that we bring them on board and to ensure that also those champions of the district development model at the district level ensure that there is synergy in terms of the work that they are doing at the integrated development plan and the provincial growth and development strategy, such that this overarching approach is factored in at the level of implementation. The second one, Chair, relates to the key takeaways that he raises around which is a concern, the fact that the construction remains constrained, and at the beginning the professor also alluded to the likely impact that the Central decision to re-advertise the 16 billion projects will have in terms of alleviating this constraint on the construction. The third one, Chair, relates to the overall project pipeline, which is mainly centered around the strategic integrated projects. I think it has been alluded that 62 projects were gazetted, what I want to know is to what extent did the first phase of this infrastructure program guide and influence the second phase of the national infrastructure plan, the gaps that are identified, because one of the challenges that we have is the ability on our part to have good overarching plans, whether it is through the National Development Plan or also the National Infrastructure Plan, because what one can sense from the last presenter in terms of the good work that is being done in terms of second phase of the National Infrastructure Plan, phase 2. Clearly, there's coherence in terms of targets, timelines, the fact that it is envisaged that by November 2022, this National Infrastructure Plan consultative process would have been finalized. It will be of interest probably just to get a sense as to at what level is the team intending to present this National Infrastructure Plan phase 2 to the committee, so that as we engage with the various sectoral departments in terms of their individual sectoral plans, we're able to ensure that they are also not left behind, though we are mindful of the fact that there is also a consultative process in terms of clusters. But I think at the parliamentary level, it will be important probably just to get a sense in terms of at what point do you intend to engage with the committee in terms of presentation of this digital infrastructure plan phase 2. The last one will be just clarity in terms of when we dealt with the SIP 1 up to 24, one project, Valga Magara. One thing that emerges is that there's an overdue project plans, and you indicated that follow-up is still ongoing. So I just want to get a sense in terms of from phase 1 of this Valga Magara, how far are we in terms of this project, and in terms of the follow-up, are there any hiccups that could probably delay this project? And then the third one also is I think it's under human settlement. There's a project called Hull Street. Just want to get a sense in terms of project progress. Like as Honorable Khai indicated, this project has been coming over a very long time, and I think in terms of the information given, it is still at procurement stage. If the team can just respond to those questions, but also in terms of now the rural roads and also the rural bridges. It was pointed out that a conditional assessment was done, which informed those projects. It will be important just to get a sense from the team as to across districts and across metros, there will be differentiation in terms of infrastructural backlog. There will be those rural districts that are more disadvantaged than others, particularly coming from the previous interaction with the government programs. You remember that at the beginning there were 21 districts that were identified by the former President Mbeki in terms of integrated sustainable rural development program and urban development program. It will be important to get a sense as to whether in terms of your planning, because you have indicated that right at the beginning, there is differentiation in terms of those areas, whether it is district, whether it is provinces, that to a large extent will be far away from the infrastructure against the targets that you have set. So it will be important to get a sense as to whether is there any plan in the country to ensure that there is a fair amount of implementation or identification of those projects in those districts, so that we have an overarching project implementation across all those 52 district municipalities, so that we do not have other provinces left behind. Thank you, Chair. Let me just check with the Honorable Apleni if he is able to get back. Honorable Apleni? Looks like we have lost Honorable Apleni. Over to you, Minister, in your team.